David received his CRSP in 2005, joined the CSSE in 2007, achieved his master's degree in Occupational Health and Safety in 2015, and a certificate in adult education in 2023. He has also taught OH&S at Dalhousie University College of Continuing Education, as well as contributing occupational health and safety development and delivery to New Brunswick and Nova Scotia branches of Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, Aspire Atlantic, Community Inc., and Nova Scotia Works. I'm pleased to introduce and give the podium over to David Power. David, do you want to?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Shelley, for that introduction. So I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about the number one hazard in any industry, in any workplace, anywhere in the world, and that is complacency. And that is specifically, what does it look like in the workplace, and what can we do to try to minimize it? Because it is part of our human nature. It's part of our nature to go on autopilot from time to time, and that's where we can get ourselves into some trouble. So I want you to think back now to the very first time you got behind the wheel of a vehicle. Okay, the very, very first time, all right? And hopefully it was a positive experience for you. And if you had a driving instructor, you know, they told you to look at the steering wheel and the clock, put your hands in that 10 to 2 position, aim high, scan your horizon. Now this one shows a push button ignition, but for a lot of us it was the key, turning that key, feeling that engine come alive, knowing that in just a few seconds, as soon as you drop that lever into D for drive, or if you were shifting into first gear, finding that sweet spot between the clutch and the accelerator, you were going to start to move this huge piece of vehicle, all right? At one point, you were at one with the universe, right? Every sense was alerted, everything was perfect and crystal clear, and we were off to the races. And then we drove a second time and a third time, and then pretty soon that 10 to 2 kind of dropped down to maybe 2 or 6 or 8. Okay, we were like one-handed. If we were lucky enough to have a convertible, we had an arm out the window. You know, we started to pick up our speed. We got a lot more comfortable behind the wheel. Actually, we got comfortable enough that we started to do other things behind the wheel. Right? We got very good at multitasking. Although I don't really believe there is multitasking, but we could do a lot of things at that switch of the hat, right? So we started to do a lot of extracurricular, extravehicular activities as we did that. And just so the ladies are not thinking I'm picking on them, it's all of us, right? We've now evolved to the point where driving is actually the secondary thing that we're doing. We're doing everything else. We're on our phones, we're distracted, we do all sorts of things. And I think that's a pretty good description of complacency, right? Where we started off where everything was like, every nerve was alerted, every single sense was on overdrive, pardon the pun. And now we've reduced it to, you know, I'm doing everything else other than driving. So that's what complacency is. If we take a look at the actual definition, it's a feeling of quiet pleasure or security, often while unaware that there's some potential danger or defect. Okay? When it gets really bad, it becomes a self-satisfaction or a smugness, dare I say an arrogance, that nothing bad is going to happen to us. Because I've been doing this job for so many years, I'm an expert at it, and worse, nothing has ever happened to me before. So therefore, nothing will ever happen to me in the future, right? Complacency is a state of decreased external awareness and reduced sensitivity to hazards. And I think that's a pretty decent way of wrapping up what complacency is. And does it affect all of us? Absolutely. And is it just at work? No, it happens at home as well. But of course, we're here talking about workplace safety today and what that looks like, and then what can we do? Because it is part of our human nature, right? We do a lot of things sort of automatically because of our competencies, our training, our knowledge, and our experience. But what can we do to try to thwart that? Because a lot of times, these are some of the root causes that end up in an injury or or something worse. And one of the things about complacency is that it does lead to erosion. It leads, in this case, it leads to the erosion of our safety program. It leads to the erosion of our safety culture, if we have one. It leads to the erosion of us working safely, and we're not even aware of it a lot of times, okay? And it's usually verbalized that there's no need to change, or I've been doing it this way for 15 or 20 or 25 years, or 6 months, or 8 weeks, whatever the case may be, right? I know what I'm doing, I'm the expert, you know, you don't have to tell me, and yet this is sort of the dangerous thinking that can get us into trouble sometimes. So this is not what complacency looks like, okay? This is an emergency, right? This is something that's totally unexpected, and, oh, it's supposed to be moving, but anyway. It's a big explosion, right? So something unexpected happens at work, we drop what we're doing, we put all of our resources into correcting it, to resolving it, and trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. But this is the picture that should be moving to. That's the picture of complacency. It's death by 1,000 cuts, all right? We don't even realize it's happening a lot of times, and slowly, over a period of time, we start to find out that we don't have a safety policy, or we're not working in a safe manner anymore, and it's further compounded by the fact that if nothing's happened to us yet, that somehow means nothing will ever happen to us, and of course that's not the case. Pilots will tell you that when they're flying to their destination, if they come off course even by 1 degree, by the time they reach their destination, they could be hundreds of miles off course. And that's what complacency does. That's what erosion does to our safety programs. We have a policy in place, and little by little, we start to come away from that policy to the point where it's not reflected by any of the work that's being done in our organizations, all right? And that's where we can get ourselves into some trouble. So if we take a look at complacency and what it looks like in the workplace, we could basically boil it down to errors and violations of people working in our organizations, okay? These are the two things that, well, these are two of the three things. Erosion of the standards, of course, would be the other face of complacency. But if we take a closer look at that, what we'll see is that it's only 25% of the, oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Errors versus violation. Okay, so an error would be somebody's made an honest mistake. They're not trained to do a certain job. They haven't been provided guidance. They're not skilled to do the job. Now, I would say respectfully, that would be sort of a supervision and management, not to allow a situation like that to happen. But it does happen, right? We put people sometimes inadvertently into positions that maybe they're not fully ready to do. So that's an error, which can lead to an injury, certainly. Then we have the violations, right? We have the people that do have the competency, they do have the knowledge, they have the training, they have the experience, but they choose for whatever reason not to work in a safe manner. And then they get themselves in trouble, they get themselves injured, or worse, they get co-workers as well, okay? So all of that put together, it's only 25% of what we would consider at-risk behaviors that are resulting from errors or from violations. The other 75% is just through simple erosion. All right, it's that complacency factor where we're not thinking about it, and therefore, in a lot of cases, we're not following it at all. So how can it happen? How does complacency creep into our workplaces, and how does it affect us? Well, I think we could take a look at 3 basic reasons for it. We have repetition, we have confidence, and we have our experience, okay? So I've done this same task 1,000 times, or 1,000,000 times, right? I can do this job with my eyes closed. You probably can't do it with your eyes closed. Okay, well, I can do this job in my sleep. You probably can't do it in your sleep either. Okay, but we get it. You've done it many times. You're the subject matter expert. You're the go-to person that we need this task done. Okay, that's good. That should build confidence. It's good to be self-confident. All right, I'm a big supporter of being self-confident. What we have to be careful of is that too much self-confidence sometimes tips us into arrogance. And it's if you become arrogant, particularly when it becomes a safety-related issue. Well, yeah, I know it could be unsafe, but because I've done this 1,000 times, because I can do it in my sleep, nothing bad's going to happen, right? You let me do that. And sometimes that overconfidence can lead to the erosion of a safety standard. And then your experience, right? I've been doing the job for many years, I'm the expert. That's in and of itself is great, and of course we want people to have that self-confidence, we want people to have that experience and that knowledge, we want people to be great workers, but what we need to be careful of is that it doesn't lead us into being complacent about working at these tasks, and therefore leaving ourselves vulnerable to becoming injured as a result of that. So we have a standard, we have a safety policy, we have a safety procedure, it's in place, but it's not always followed. So like the pilot, we're heading to our direction, and now we're coming off course a little bit. We're not following that procedure by a degree, and then pretty soon it's by 2 degrees, and then it's by 5, and then pretty soon nobody is following the standard. The standard's still there, the rule for your organization is still there on the books, but nobody's following it, okay? Partly because it's hard to enforce, partly because that enforcement may not be consistent, but it's largely because it's become part of the complacent attitude towards whatever that policy is. And I would say, and I know we have a regulator in the room today, I would say with, I think I'm not speaking out of turn, if the regulator comes into your organization and sees that you have a written safety rule, but nobody's following it, it's pretty hard then to claim a due diligence defense in the event that you would have to claim it, right? You have to be able to show that you've taken every reasonable precaution under the circumstances for the protection of your workers. So if you have safety policies at your workplace and nobody's following them, it would be better that you didn't have the policies and just you took the hit that way. Okay, no more on the regulator. Okay, I don't want to get myself into trouble here. All right. What are the reasons? Okay, why do we have erosion of our safety standards? Why are we complacent in the first place? Well, sometimes they're not really easy to understand. They're not easy to follow. They're written by people that have never done the job before. Okay, which then could really make it complicated. And if you are the subject matter expert and you're looking at a 10-step process where you know you can do it safely and efficiently in 4, well, you're not going to follow those other 6 steps, right? And there's the start of the deviation that can lead to either a violation or an error, okay? It becomes the normal working environment in your organization that nobody's going to follow this policy on working at height, or working in a confined space, or using power tools, or driving a vehicle to a customer's location, whatever the case may be, okay? It's not viewed as being relevant, it's not viewed as being important, and so it gets eroded, basically. It gets left behind, nobody is following it, okay? Sometimes that can also be as a result of somebody in a supervisory role that sees something that's unsafe, and for a variety of reasons, they turn a blind eye to deaf ear. And anytime I've been speaking to supervisors, anytime I've been doing a supervisory course of any kind, I always try to reiterate to the supervisory people, you know, people may not like you, but they see you as the boss. They see you as the authority figure. And so if you allow unsafe acts to happen, they're going to happen because that's, again, it's human nature, right? If the boss saw me grinding some metal and I wasn't wearing my face shield, he or she didn't say anything to me. I guess that's okay. Of course, it's not okay. And then once somebody does get injured, then it becomes sometimes an overreaction. But that's how safety can start to get eroded. That sometimes it's just the policy doesn't make any sense, or the policy has been created by somebody who's never done the work, and so it's overly complicated, and people just aren't going to read it, people aren't going to follow it, and that's how we start to step away from it. Okay? Put that in to emphasize. But anyway, that's not my point, okay? That's a consideration, but it's a lot of times it's just because we're not reading and we're not following the rules because they don't seem to make sense. Okay? So again, we have our standard, we start to deviate from that standard a little bit. Okay, a little bit of variation, I'm going to drop this, we're going to not stop doing that, we don't really need to do this anymore. And over time, that erosion continues to the point where, again, nobody's following the policy at all, and yet it's still on the books. Okay, your company still has the working at heights policy, but nobody's following it for a variety of reasons. And that's where our complacency also kicks in and gets us into trouble. Now, I'm not a construction safety expert, okay? That's you guys. But I'm pretty sure he's not allowed to stand on the ladder like that, right? I'm pretty sure. So, but does he do it? Do people do that? Sure, people take shortcuts all the time, right? They have the best intentions a lot of times, but sometimes they can have a horrible result. So what happens when we are doing the tasks that we're very well aware of? We've been doing this task for 1,000 years. We can do it in our sleep with our eyes closed, all of those good things. What happens is we kind of, our conscious mind goes into sort of an autopilot. We're just going through the motions because we've done it so many times, right? That should be a red flag. And again, it's easy for me to stand here and tell you about that. It's a lot more challenging when we're out in the field, out in our offices, doing the work, and trying to think, okay, yes, I know I've done this 1,000 times. What could go wrong? take a look at that in just a second, okay? We do take shortcuts, we do omit steps, we do maybe not follow the policies that we have in place for a variety of reasons, okay? All of these deviations are that's the erosion that I'm talking about. It's the getting away from our policies, it's getting away from working in a safe manner until something goes wrong and somebody gets hurt, okay? Sometimes we're taking risks, a lot of times we're rushing, right? We're under deadlines, either real deadlines or deadlines that we think are real. We perceive that there's a deadline, okay? It's just as valid because we do the same things. We start rushing through our tasks, especially if we're an expert in that task, if we've got a lot of experience with it, we tend to take those shortcuts and take risks because we think every single time nothing's going to go wrong, right? Nobody sits out in the morning thinking that they're going to get hurt at work today. Nobody does, all right? It's always a shock. It's always a surprise. And then when you do an investigation, yeah, a lot of times it comes out it shouldn't really be a shock or a surprise because we weren't following our rules. But that's what happens, okay? Thinking that everything is going to work out every single time is basically the result of complacency, right? Nothing bad's going to happen. Mostly because nothing bad has ever happened to me doing it this way, but that doesn't mean that 20 minutes from now something bad is going to happen, right? I've always said to people, if you've worked 25 years doing something unsafe and nothing's ever happened to you, I don't want to be around for the next couple of months, right? Because the odds are, on the balance of probabilities, you're looking at having some sort of an injury or some sort of an event at work, and that's what we want to try to prevent. Okay? So, again, we're not following our procedures. We don't verify our work. That's especially important in lockout, tagout, where we lock everything up and we start working on something without taking that extra moment to verify that the work has been done. We don't take that extra minute to verify that our personal protective equipment is in proper working order. We don't check our vehicles. We don't check our power tools. We just get right into the job, okay? That can work against us. That's complacency, because I've used this drill, for the last 6 months, it's working fine, okay? What could go wrong, right? And assume that others are also concerned about the safety aspects of the jobs that they're performing, right? Part of that complacency is, well, yeah, I know I'm taking some shortcuts, but Bill next to me, he's safe. He knows what he's doing. And Josie next to me, well, she's safe too. She knows what she's doing, right? And of course, it's not usually what happens. Usually it's all of us are being complacent to a certain extent with the jobs that we're doing, and collectively sometimes that can really amount to a potential problem coming up. So with that, internally, we have contributing factors. Just like we do when we're doing the investigations, there are the basic causes, then we have our sort of contributing causes. Okay, so from an external point of view, again, it's a mindset. It's what complacency kind of fools us into thinking that, machines take care of themselves. Accidents just happen. It happens to somebody else. It doesn't happen to me. Even if one did happen to me 10 years ago, wow, that wasn't my fault. That was something else, right? We explain it away. We rationalize it. We make excuses for it to ourselves, right? Not to necessarily other people, but even to ourselves, which allow us to continue to come off course and allow us to continue to erode our safety. And this one, the lack of oversight is not really applicable here, but there are some organizations out there, of course, where management is not focused on safety. So there's nothing to erode, right? There is no safety program really to speak of. But that could be an external contributing factor as well. Okay. A lot of times we have some tasks that are somewhat unchallenging, they're mundane, they're boring, right? Everybody's got some part of their job that, it's not the most favorite part of our job, but we got to get it done, right? And sometimes those are the jobs, those are the things that trip us up and get us injured as a result, because our minds are not on the task. We're in autopilot. We've done it so many times, nothing's ever happened. I know what I'm doing. My experience, my competencies allow me to do it this way. Yeah, I know there's a 25-step process. I can do it in 10, right? And that's, if it works on day one, that's great. It's not going to continue working until somebody gets hurt. That's what we're trying to address here. Lack of incident identification, analysis, and reporting. All right? Any good occupational health and safety system has a good, strong reporting component to it, right? You can't be everywhere at once. You need to know how your organization is working. You need to see if there are trends. You need to see if there's a certain type of injury or a certain type of location or a certain type of worker that are getting injured, and could it be one of the root causes being complacency? Could it be that complacency is a result of some type of erosion of a safety policy or procedure? And then intermittent, if any, safety training or safety emphasis, right? So that speaks more to the culture. Do you have a culture of safety at your workplace? And if you do, that's a strong defense against complacency because it's always being talked about. It's always in the forefront of your mind. I used to sit on the board in Nova Scotia many years ago where one of the things that we did is they asked us to come up with a mission statement. And I thought it was probably the best one I've heard really ever, and that was every decision we make will start with health and safety. I'm paraphrasing it right there, but it's essentially that. Every decision we make, regardless of what that decision is, will start with health and safety. By keeping health and safety in the forefront, no matter how busy you get, no matter how repetitious your tasks are, no matter how rushed or distracted you may be, if you can think of every decision you make on a daily basis starts with health and safety, which is just basically, is this safe? Could something go wrong? What can I do to prevent that from happening? You've taken a massive step forward in preventing complacency from settling in with you. Okay? And then we have our internal factors. All right, and this is again, is people make assumptions, people make mistakes, people misjudge situations, they don't do a proper risk assessment even if it's an informal one, and so they can get themselves into some trouble. And if we add in complacency into that, where they don't think anything is going to happen. Now, unfortunately, this is frozen, but that's your typical forklift backing into racking, and everything comes down on top of the forklift driver, okay? I've worked with enough forklift drivers, but they're not necessarily careful at it either. If they're rushing, if their mind is not on their task, then a lot of strikes happen because they're not paying attention, right? And eventually, if you hit steel racking enough times with an 8,000-pound steel forklift, you know, we should be expected to see a collapse of the racking and the material on those racks, okay? People don't go about their jobs thinking what could go wrong. Okay, particularly if they're the jobs that you are well aware of, that you're well trained, and you're very experienced, you've been doing it for many years, you probably aren't thinking what could go wrong today. And if that could go wrong, what have I done to correct it? Are the controls that exist, are they sufficient? And you know, this is not like a royal commission that takes 6 months. This could be done in a couple of minutes just before you start the task, right? It's just questions that you would ask yourself as you're coming up. And it's too bad that this guy's frozen because he's cutting a rail tie and the tie flips back and hits him. All right? Failing to see the big picture, cutting the television. Again, not taking enough time to do a proper risk assessment. Just a quick one, right? I have to cut this rail tie. If I cut it in half, will it stay on the ground, or is it like on a spring? Is it going to come back up? If it does, am I standing in the way? It's going to hit me. Simple things like that. We'll assume that he's cut rail ties for a long time. This is not a new thing for him. He's an expert with a torch. Even our experts can get hurt at work. Even the most safety-conscious person at work can be a victim of the work injury, and a lot of times it's because we're not focused on the task. There's been an erosion within ourselves of a safety procedure or a safety policy. So what do we do? Okay, so it's easy to present the problem, right? It's a little bit more challenging to present a potential solution to it. So how do we respond to complacency? How do we try to combat that? Do we provide the coaching for people? Do we provide the training? Do we provide the discipline? Right? Is it a violation as opposed to an error? Did somebody knowingly do something that resulted in their or somebody else's injury? Right? Do we do anything? Or is it just, it's just like the picture? Is there anything we can? It's human nature, right? How do we control human nature? Well, I think there are some things that we could try to at least consider, all right? I don't have the magic bullet here, folks, but it's close. It's close, okay? How do we stop that erosion, okay? Well, two big ones, training and discipline, right? Training so people have the knowledge, discipline, because they chose for whatever reason not to follow the policies or procedures that they've had the training on, okay? But what if everybody has had the training, right? There's nothing to train. You've just completed lockout training or confined space training. You've just finished training your new people on power tools or the traffic control, whatever the case may be, right? Oh, okay. Well, then we go to discipline. But then how do you discipline one person when an entire department isn't following the rule, right? You could, I suppose, you could discipline the entire department, but I think then we're getting away from the purpose of discipline too, right? It's very hard to have that sacrificial lamb when everybody else is not following, right? I think then we have to look a little bit deeper. Okay, why is the policy not being followed? Why is there erosion in this area? It should be a lot more robust. So what can we do? How do we combat that complacency? Okay? Well, again, it's before you start the task, before you make a decision at work, ask yourself, what could go wrong? How could I get hurt? Am I taking the right precautions? Am I distracted? Right? And that's not always an easy question for ourselves to answer. But, you know, I'm coming to work today. Is my mind on my job? Or am I worried about things at home? Am I not feeling well? Did I get enough sleep last night? Right? All of those things. Am I really able to climb up that scaffold and start working on that building? Am I really in a condition to get behind the wheel of this truck and drive it for the next 2 hours to my location? These are things that we should be asking ourselves honestly. And then we should be able to answer them honestly as well, right? What could go wrong? What can I do to prevent that from happening before it happens? Because we all know what happens when somebody gets hurt. Everybody pitches in, you know, it's like that explosion picture, right? We all throw our resources in to try to figure out what happened, make sure it never happens again. The trick is to take those precautions without the injury, right? Do we actually, don't put your hands up for this, okay? Do we actually follow our policies and procedures? Do you know what your policies and procedures are? All right? And I'll just say, I'm not even going to look up in case somebody feels compelled to put their hand up. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But if you don't know what your own organization's safety policies are or procedures are, then the erosion's already started, right? And I would suggest it's probably well underway, right? And you know, complacency is about believing that nothing bad is going to happen to you, but when you add that in with erosion, if you don't know what your safety policies are, it's very hard to then defend that, well, you know, this is what our policy says. If you don't know what it is, likely you're not following it, and if you're not following it and it results in an injury, again, your due diligence kind of goes away, right? Because you can't show that you've taken all reasonable precautions. But the good thing is, if you followed your policies to the letter, do they make sense? That's how you find out that, oh, wait a minute, this person that wrote this lockout procedure has never worked with equipment before, so that's why it doesn't make sense. We've got 6 steps in here that don't need to be in here. We can do this safely and efficiently in 4 steps, right? Remember that show, Name That Tune? Name that tune in 1 note or 2 notes? It's the same thing, right? If you can do something efficiently and safely in smaller numbers of steps, then that's how it should be done. But are people doing it? Right? How do you know at this point in time that any safety policy, really any policy that you have in your workplace is efficient, that it works, right? If you're not looking at them. Do they need to be updated? Maybe. Do they need to be revised? Well, the minute you change it in your processes, typically then you have to change your policies around that process as well, right? Is it relevant still today? Ooh, sorry. Is it relevant today? Okay, training. Okay, location. Training gives us that ability to, again, keep health and safety in the forefront, keeps us from forgetting, keeps us from becoming complacent because we're always reminded. All right, we're reminded to do the task safely. It gives us that opportunity to say, you know what, I think we could do this better or safer if we changed this, if we added that, if we took this away. All right, you're revising as you're training, usually. And that's a good thing to do. If we do training once a year, if we do training once every 2 or 3 years, like some of the legislative training is, well, you know, it's maybe not as effective as it could be, right? Don't be content with your knowledge. In other words, don't rest on your laurels. We can always learn more, particularly when it comes to doing our jobs safer and safely. Can we learn more? Absolutely, right? If there has been an incident, what are the lessons learned that we can take back from that? Right? We should be able to look at any one of our employees in our organization and know with confidence that people know exactly what they're doing. And not just because of their competencies, but also because of their training, because of their awareness that complacency, if it gets in there and gets a hold, it can have a devastating effect on them and co-workers as well, right? And finish this statement up with psychological safety, right? That's become a big deal now in occupational health and safety circles in the last few years, and rightfully so, because it's a huge field. And when it comes to complacency, which, as I said earlier, is human nature, how do we possibly combat something that's inherent in all of us? We all become complacent at some point on something, right? When it becomes workplace safety, that's when we're running a risk here. So can we create mental challenges to help us be attentive? Can we do something so we don't go into autopilot every time we do a certain task? Can we start to practice the what if? Can we start this idea of making every decision with health and safety being the first thought, right? If I get behind the wheel of this car, this vehicle, is it safe? Am I doing anything that could make myself unsafe? How do I deal with traffic out there? How do I deal with inclement weather if I'm working outside? What about tools that are maybe not the best condition? What if the only drill in the site, has electrical cord all over the power cord? What kind of decisions do I make in those cases? Maintain a questioning attitude insofar as, is this safe? Am I going to get hurt? What do I have to do to ensure my safety, the safety of the people around me? And that's making sure that you're also always aware of your surroundings, okay? I've done a little bit of work in construction over the years, and certainly like on construction sites, and I know construction sites change on a minute-by-minute basis, right? So you could be standing in one area, things are changing around you all the time. It's a very active site, there's a lot of moving parts there. You need to always be aware of your surroundings. Even in an office setting, even in a plant floor, things can change, and all of a sudden what was relatively safe or completely safe 5 minutes ago may now be a potential danger because something has changed. So again, we know this, but it's just to remind you always to be aware of your surroundings, right? Again, avoid making assumptions about the status of your task or your processes. I know that you know the job, all right? You are the expert at what you do. That's why you're here, right? That's why your companies have hired you. That's why you're progressing with your companies, and that's great. That's what we all want to do. We all want to do better, okay? But we don't want to do it at the expense of our safety. We don't want to do it at the expense of our co-workers' safety as well, right? So that means that your years of experience sometimes trick us into thinking, well, nothing bad will ever happen to me because it hasn't happened yet, okay? That's the mindset that we have to always be aware of to try to combat, all right? Because just because we worked safely for 20 years, maybe doing something maybe not the safest way, doesn't mean that this afternoon something's going to happen or tomorrow, okay? Every day that we work unsafe and we haven't been hurt it's been a very lucky day, that's all, okay? But eventually love runs out, and we want to be aware of that, okay? And it's, again, we want healthy self-confidence in people, we want our workforce, we want our fellow employees to be confident in their abilities, absolutely. Just need to be, just for ourselves as well, we just need to be aware. We don't want that to slip over into the smugness area, okay, or the arrogance, because then we completely disbelieve that anything could happen to us. Healthy, self-confident people, they know there's a chance they could get hurt if they're taking a risk, okay, they make that decision, okay, but when we become arrogant about our abilities, we don't see that at all, and we're usually the first people to be shocked when we get hurt, because we didn't see it coming, okay? The belief that it can happen to me is the wrong belief, okay? Because it can happen to us, as we know. And then the last part of the psychological, recognize and dismiss distractions when they come up. Well, that's very easy to say, right? And I'm the first one to say I get as distracted as anybody else at work. It's really about being able to tune into the job that you're doing, particularly if it's one that you do all the time, okay? Those repetitive, possibly mundane tasks. All right, it's really then a challenge. What can you do to make it less mundane, less boring? How can you ensure that your mind is on the task for the length of time that you need to have it on that task? Because the minute our distractions come in, we lose sight of what's going on, and then we can become injured as a result. Okay? We don't want to get into that autopilot mode because then we don't see what's going on. It's that tunnel vision, right? We don't see that there's something imminently dangerous in front of us. And finally, there are many faces to complacency. It does take on, it looks the same, but yet there's some subtle differences here. I just want to wrap up with what those subtle differences look like, okay? Apathy, all right? I don't care. We have people in the workforce today that they don't care. They're just there to put in their time, get a paycheck. They really don't contribute really anything. They do their jobs, but maybe they're not doing their jobs in the safest way, right? So can we, if this exists, can we develop a culture to encourage that empowerment, that communication? Can we give more autonomy to workers that don't seem to care? Can we get passion for the work back to them, or can we infuse it in them? Because if you're not passionate about your work, you're likely not passionate about workplace safety either. And you're just going along on autopilot until something goes wrong, right? Can we do something as an organization to breathe in that passion, not just for safety, but just for the work itself into these people? And of course, provide a workplace that's free from hazards. Well, of course, that's our ultimate goal all the time. But can we change the attitudes of people that are apathetic? Okay, that's one face of complacency. Assumptions, right? Information is taken for granted. Well, I thought that's what you said, right? It's really about miscommunications, people not understanding what's going on, right? So we want to create a workplace, sure you have it, where people are not afraid to ask questions, especially our students that come to work with us from time to time, or new workers or younger workers. All they want to do is they want to please you, they want to make you feel that you make the right decision in hiring them, so they want to ask a lot of questions. You want to really foster that environment where no question is a dumb question. We need to know that you know what you're doing, right? Just like your 25-year veteran, you need your 25-hour newbie to be on the same wavelength as that as well. Because again, they make the wrong assumption, and we've got the stats, and we've got a story of a young worker or a new worker being critically injured at work because they didn't know what they were doing, right? Or they didn't have the proper guidance in there. Then we have boredom, right? That's another face of complacency, right? What can I do to basically pass the day, right? These are the people that are like almost Walking Dead on Monday and Tuesday, but by Friday they're lively because it's the weekend, right? Nothing to do about work. It's all about what they can get away with at work, right? And a lot of that could also be performance management issues, but from a safety lens, people that are bored again are people that are not really focused on their tasks. All right, they're ultra complacent with what they're doing, and they can be at risk to themselves as well as to the rest of us. And then dumbing down, and I've seen this in many different phases over the years, simplifying a point to make it meaningless. And that usually comes out with, well, if you're going to treat me like an idiot, I'm going to act like an idiot. All right? Bill, you don't have your safety glasses on, you need to get them on. Instead of saying, oh yeah, sorry, I get, well, she's not wearing hers, right? So now I've got two potential eye injuries waiting to happen instead of one, right? It doesn't matter what other people are doing or not doing. We have to take responsibility for our safety, and if we are in a leadership role, we also have to take responsibility for those people under our supervision as well. Okay? Can we redistribute the work to make it less boring? Can we introduce more challenging work to them if they're capable of doing it? Can we rotate their jobs? Can we provide training in different areas? Again, it goes back to apathy, really. Can we infuse passion on our jobs into these people? Because with that passion will come that passion for workplace safety as well. I've tried all week to pronounce this word, familiarity. Oh, that's not too bad. I stumbled on that one. Okay. What do we do when we have a person that knows everything, right? And, we want people to know everything about their jobs, of course, but sometimes that can cross into the field of arrogance, and we get sort of a smug attitude. It doesn't come across really well. How can we try to combat that? How can we try to correct that? Because, the know-it-all people are also complacent because they know it all. Nothing bad can happen to them. I know all the things that can happen to me working at a height without my fall protection on. It just will never happen to me, right? Until the day it does, right? So can we regularly review and test the procedures that surround that particular task, right? Do they make sense again? Maybe they know it all because they see some flaws in the procedure that they feel that they can work around. Can we conduct refresher training again? Can we get that training component maybe a little bit higher up on the charts? Because the more we train, the more we're working with people walking out to the floor, to a site, with a clipboard and a pen, and just staring at people, right? It freaks people out all the time, right? What are you doing, right? They don't trust. And all I want to see is, well, I just want to see how you're doing your job to see if we can make it safer, right? Do we have that sort of culture in our workplace today, where people know if somebody's behind me with a clipboard, they're not spying on me, they're not doing anything to get me in trouble. Quite the opposite. They're there to help me, they're here to try to make my job safer, right? And that can take a little bit away from this I know what all attitude, because really at the end of the day, we don't know everything, right? We may know a lot of stuff, and we may know our jobs very well, but we don't know everything. And if we're not thinking of safety, because if we become compliant with our safety, complacent rather, we should be compliant with our safety. If that's eroded, then we're not thinking about it at all. And that's what puts us at higher risk, right? Ignorance, so that's the opposite, right? I don't know. So a lot of that could be training. So we want to make sure that the training is timely, that it makes sense. You know, to give lockout training to office staff, maybe it's not the best use of our training time and dollars, right? But certainly to people that are in a lockout situation, right? Maybe ergonomics would be the better one for office staff. Whatever it is, maybe, are we training the people appropriately with the right types of training, right? Do we have clear written verbal instructions? Are they available? Do we follow our procedures? Because if we're not following our procedures, if we don't know what our procedures are to follow, we're like the pilot again, right? We're heading for the destination of no injuries. But now we're deviating slightly. We're not following this. We're not following that. We're not following that whole section. Pretty soon, you know, we're not following anything. We're just kind of riding on luck that nobody gets hurt today, right? Make it okay to observe the performance of staff. Make it okay to critique. And I know, you know, from a supervisory point of view, sometimes those critiques are a little less than flattering, but if we can get into the habit of a true critique, or, you know, I don't think that this is safe, can we discuss it, or I've got a concern, can we discuss it? So we're not going to work refusals, we're not going into all of this heavy stuff. Can we have that dialogue? That's a huge plus for you, for your safety culture, but that's also a huge defense against complacency, because again, people understand, you know what, I'm not sure about this, but I know that I can ask. I'm in a safe space, right? I can ask my supervisor, I can ask my manager, and I have no fear of being made fun of or told I'm stupid or anything like that. I know I'm going to get an answer. If I don't get an answer today, I know I'll get an answer in the short term, and that my company's going to be working with me, right? Impulsiveness, right? People that act without thinking, right? And we all do it to a certain degree, but there's a type of worker out there, and usually they have the best intentions, they have so much energy, but they're a hazard unto themselves. They're loose into your workplace, and they usually cause more damage than good, right? So I know what I'm doing. So do they assess the risks? Probably not. And if they do, it's a very surface kind of assessment, and it's more like, okay, I can beat that cycle, I'm going to grab the obstruction, right? I'm going to just run underneath this suspended load, right? I'm going to take a risk that I shouldn't be doing, right? Do we do close call reporting or near miss reporting, right? Or do we wait for the injury to happen and then do the investigation, right? It's the macho attitude, which, you know, it's not just the young people, it's not just the males either. The macho attitude can be all sorts of people, and it's kind of a combination of what we just talked about, right? It's the combination of, I know my job so well, nothing's ever going to happen to me, but then something can happen. And then it goes into risk-taking, all right? People that take risks needlessly. And a lot of times they're taking those risks because they're not following the policies that your company have in place. And sometimes that's because they don't know what the policies are in place, or we've deviated enough, there's been enough erosion of that standard that nobody's following it anymore. And so then somebody's hurt as a result, and then we all go back to square one and we try to start it over again. The last two, people who think and believe that nothing bad will ever happen to me, which is the basis of complacency, and the routinization, all right? That's just the repetitive nature of some of the things that we do, right? I've done this so many times before. Well, okay, I've done it so many times before. We consider you to be our company expert in this task. How can we make it more challenging? How can we make it safer? Do we need to review it? Can we conduct tests or drills? Can you teach it to somebody else? And this is where the know-it-all people can actually be a huge advantage to your organization. The people that know it all can sometimes be some of the best teachers, as long as they're not teaching their bad habits, right? Give them some extra tasks. Or the people that are bored or apathetic, could they actually be a trainer or a leader or somebody that can do some sort of training for your people? The invulnerability, though, It won't happen to me. I think we're all like that at some point, right? We all take risks. We don't always assess those risks. We figure because of our, if I go back to the driving analogy that we opened with, you know, we've all probably done something behind the wheel that we knew we shouldn't, and we got away with it, which means we did it a second time or a third time, and then in some cases, then it results in a crash or results in an accident of some sort, and we realize that we've done something that we shouldn't. And as you know, the whole trick with health and safety is to put those controls in place before the crash, before the accident, before the person's injury, right? That's the critical part, and that's the whole trick of trying to keep ahead and keep that complacent attitude out of the workplace as much as possible. So basically, it's the same choice we have with basically anything to do with workplace safety. Do we keep the status quo? Do we just keep on our merry way until something bad happens? And then we're all, you know, we're all very much attuned to what's happened, and we have all these great ideas, we have all these great policies and procedures that, you know, 3 months later, we don't remember, we've never actually seen it, or it's written by people that don't have the experience, it's written in such a way that nobody can understand it, so therefore nobody's going to follow it. Or do we take the continual improvement? And if I could just wrap it up by saying, if we take the path on the right side, the right-hand side there, I think that the best thing that we can do, if you remember anything from this presentation this afternoon, it would be, if we can, starting today, every decision that we make, regardless of what that decision is, at home as well as at work, does it start with health and safety, right? What could go wrong? What can I do to make sure that nothing bad will happen to me? We don't want to be like this little guy here, right? Again, that's supposed to be who we could anyway. Thank you very much for your time, folks. It's a pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll stick around. I'll answer them for you. But I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much.